I was thinking of, as you were saying that, Job. And that's a hard story for people. And I think I get it pretty well. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it was, Satan tormented Job and God kind of let
Yeah.
him. And
Yeah.
then it was after a while that Job was finally, he went to God and he said, come on, man, what the heck with all this? And God answered him and he said, did you make all this stuff like I did? And do you know how many cattle are on the hills? And it just he did all this info that he knew. And
Yeah.
Job walked away very satisfied with those answers. Um and I know there's been a point where I mean I got it too. I think the common understanding of that story is God saying, I'm different, you don't get it, so quit bugging me about it. And just accept that I'm different and you're gonna just have to put up with it. But Job was really he was satisfied. He was like, you're right. And it wasn't, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I even asked. Like, God did answer him. And I think we've probably lost some translation of their interaction because I always kind of heard it as God was kind of like, you just don't get it. And tough luck. And Job was like, oh yeah, good point. And but that's not what he did. What God did for Job was he did explain it and he did invite him into understanding and he did explain to him. He didn't just say you're not going to get it too bad. He said here's what's going on. I've got all these things and they're gonna be worked in the best way and they're going to ultimately result in your good. And that's closer. I'd have to look at it again because I don't remember Job
Did
really
did
well.
Job end up seeing God?
He was in, gosh, because he was in the whisper to David because there was the fire and the whirlwind and all this and the earthquake, and then there was the whisper, and he heard just the whisper, and that was God. In Job, I don't remember if it said that he saw him. Um, but he definitely heard him. They talked because God replied.
But
And I just always felt like it was this story of God being like, you're not gonna get it. It's too much. And so quit bugging me about it. But my later understanding was very much of a father who sympathized and understood and recognized that his kid was hurting and did walk him through towards understanding, and Job did get it. um
you
and
know, he was God was telling Job. It's been a long time since I read the story.
yeah,
He was telling God was telling Job who God was.
right,
He was describing who he was.
yeah,
And once Job knew who God was, that was the end of it. Everything was fine.
yeah,
Everything changed.
yeah,
A lot of people can get all tied up with a lot of issues with that story.
right,
My problem is I've never looked at it in the Hebrew, but I've read enough of the Hebrew using the tools that I have because I do not know Hebrew,
right,
um, but I have the tools necessary to be able to translate.
Yeah.
that I've learned that I don't trust hardly anything in the Old Testament.
Mm.
I mean, there are several words in the in the Old Testament that are used um, thousands and thousands of times, and yet never translated properly.
Mm.
And there's one word that is translated over 11,000 times. It's not translated, it's in the Hebrew over 11,000 times, and yet it is never translated. So if you've got a book as big as Hebrew, as the Old Testament, and
Hmm.
you've got just one word that isn't translated 11,050 times, that's got to put a question in your mind. What does that word mean?
Yeah.
And you'll look in the lexicons and they'll give you not a meaning, they'll call the word a direct object.
Hmm.
Well, big deal. But that doesn't tell me what it means or what it does in the sentence. And
Yeah.
nobody knows what it does in the sentence.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you look at that, there's lots of words like that in the Old Testament
Hmm.
that don't make sense. They just don't make sense. Um, and so I just look at that and I say, well, that just causes me to question: is is this really what God said?
Yeah.
Is this what I'm supposed to understand? Because some of it doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
And I what helped me in all of this was beginning to doubt that what I've been reading was true,
Hmm.
that it was really what God said.
Hmm.
That I know translators say and teachers and preachers say that it means this, means that, but I look at it and oftentimes, and when it comes to Greek, I know enough to know that what they translated isn't what was there. It's not even the same words.
Hmm.
And it's like they make up words because they're trying to create a flow that makes sense. I understand that, but
Hmm.
admit that it's not what God said. It's just what you think God says, it's what you think God meant.
Hmm.
And I that's it's wonderful. It was wonderful for me when I began to doubt the word of God because I didn't doubt God. I
Yeah.
wasn't doubting God. I was doubting what I was reading. I was doubting what I was being told
Hmm.
by people who said they're the ministers of God. I was doubting all of that, but I wasn't doubting God. I didn't know what to think. And I was just honest with God. I don't know what to think about this, but I just can't imagine that you're like this or that you would do this or that you have done that.
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense to me. So if this is correct, then I need you to do something to help me know that this is from you because right now, Father, I'm just putting these things on the shelf and sometimes I'm throwing them in the trash and just saying, I've got to know you. You're my Father. There's no way that you have left me on my own and demanded that I figure this out. And if I don't figure it out, then I'm going to suffer for it. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you, I've suffered a lot over the years, misunderstanding the Bible and believing what people told me that just inside of me, just something didn't click, but yet it did click because I was told that I was supposed to believe these things.
Hmm.
And as I had more and more questions and began to find things that I absolutely knew, and God would even tell me that is not what I meant. Here is what I meant. He would tell me, and I
Hmm.
would look at it, and then I could apply that principle every place that like a word would
Hmm.
appear, and He would show me the meaning of the word, and it had nothing to do with what was in the lexicons, but the meaning would fit, and it would always reflect who God is. And if his words don't reflect who he is, then they're lies. And the problem is that if you don't know what his words are, then what do you do? Well, I would go to God. It's like my wife, she doesn't know Greek. And she says, what am I supposed to do? I don't know Greek. Well, I'll teach you what I know. And what I know will be consistent with what God has written in your heart. And it will change your life. And it did.
Mhm.
It did. Everybody that I've ever spent time to talking about these things, their life has gone from darkness to light. I mean, look what happened to you, Lee. Same thing
Mhm.
happened to me.
Mhm.
I mean, gosh, I just remember the stories you used to tell me that just make me cringe.
Yeah.
And I look at you now, man, oh man,
Oh, it was an awful place to be and to be stuck, and I am so
you're
grateful.
stuck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just stuck there, and I think that's amazing that you kinda not threw out, but kinda threw out the Bible and just but didn't throw out God. I almost feel oof. I was talking to my son yesterday, and he was saying how he was really wrestling with God. And I think he's been in church, he's been in ministry, he's done mission work and all kinds of stuff. And he's gotten a lot of churchianity, you know,
yeah,
put
yeah.
it put
All of
in
us.
them. The lies, and he's got lies over here and some truth over here, and it's conflicting. And his is almost a flip where he's struggling right now with with lining up who he thinks God is with the stuff that he's been taught and learned by Christians, and the way they've interpreted the Bible for him and taught him. Um, and it's really a hard connection to make because they don't line up. And
Yeah, yeah,
he's in the middle of kind of a struggle. Um, and I remember we talked about it yesterday. I remember telling him years ago, he was like leading the worship team or something for youth at the church, and he was just tore up all the time and trying to do the right stuff and get it right.
yeah,
And because then
yeah.
God would really love him, and he would be happier because he'd know God would love him, because he'd know if he was doing the right stuff, then God would have to love him. And so he was trying so hard and just getting eaten alive. And we talked about it yesterday. I said, "Do you remember when I told you to leave the church?" And he was like, "Yeah, that was like hard, but I mean, I knew what you meant." And I said, "Yeah, I remember telling you, like, if you turn your back on all this stuff, then maybe God can actually get a hold of you and teach you, because you're so tied into I've heard this, I've learned this, a smart guy told me that, then he pointed to the Bible, so I know the Bible says that, but I don't think God loves me." And I was just like, "Yeah, man, throw all that out if you can, because then maybe God can get a hold of you." And he did in some ways, and he's still walking through that, but it's so interesting to me how you almost did the reverse, where you threw out all the stuff but kept who you thought God should be. You were like, he's supposed to love me, he's supposed to be good to me, he says that he does, and he's a healer and a father, and so I'm going to keep that and then get rid of what everybody else said. And I
And I
feel
kept, I kept repeating those things to myself.
yeah.
That's
And
what I was talking to because we all talk to ourselves all the time. We
yeah,
think to ourselves,
yeah,
um, and I would just, I knew what I knew I felt uncomfortable, and sometimes I would learn truth that I was uncomfortable with
yeah,
because it was contrary to what I had been taught.
right,
But when I knew something was true, that I knew God had told me, then I just would always go back to that. And every so often I would tell myself, you know, here's what God says to me. God says he loves me. Father, you say you love me.
yeah,
That's it, Father. You love me, you love me, you love me, you love me. And even though I don't feel loved,
right,
don't feel loved, but I would tell myself the truth. And I
yeah,
kept telling myself the truth till the day came when I believed what I was saying. I
yeah.
had to say it so many times before I finally believed it.
that's so powerful and so wonderful, and I think it's so rare. And I think so few people, which we've already talked about, because we feel pretty confident that people that either go to church or don't go to church have this weird idea of God and who he is, and it's not usually very accurate, pretty much around the world. And um and what they'll end up usually doing is getting disillusioned and throwing it all away. And that does and then we, me and you, I think both think that that's kind of the best place to start is
Yeah,
so God himself can interrupt your life in the ways that are good for you and you can spot it. My wife kind of went through that where she left her church and was like, "All right, I'm not buying this. It's a crock. It's not working.
yeah,
It's bad." And yeah, oh, kind of held that glimmer of, but there's something. I know there's something good, but she threw out church and Bible stuff and just, I'll try and be a good person and whatever. And that was the spot God could go in and go, like, that's where I'm at, is in that beginning of, yeah, like I'm at the beginning, I'm not something that you, you'll be good enough to get finally, or I'm not the end result, I'm the start, I mean, he's both, but yeah, but anyway, I think that's so rare that I just know people just throw it all out and then are almost hostile towards it. My wife is in, some ex religious group,
yeah,
former Christian
yeah,
chat groups, and people are so hostile and so angry and so, if somebody does go to church or want to find out about God, they just burn them in the, online. They'll just, you're an
yeah,
idiot, you're believing fairy tales and all this stuff, and they're just so angry and hurt and disillusioned. And and those people, those people break my heart in a way because they've just picked up a new dogma.
yeah,
They've picked up an anti-God dogma
yeah,
instead of a God dogma, and neither are right, because neither of them are who he is. Um, but yeah, one's probably not even more right than the other. Being a religious zealot isn't any more godly or Christ-like than being an angry person. It doesn't. They're both wrong. Um, and so yeah, I was telling my son the other day. I was reiterating. I said, throw out the stuff that doesn't work. It's okay. He'll find you.